combinación que tiene la chamaquita y ese floater, ese floater. Tú eres mami, que si tú quieres nos volamos pa' Miami. Volamos, volamos. Yo solo pa' ti, que todos los 15 nos gastamos esa money. Pegadita pa' que te dice. Soleja cuando hay nubes grises. Atrévete, préndete a los TNT. Cara diablo la bandida, pero ese culo me da fe. Estoy en la lista de espera y ella en el cel. Dice que le llegue, que se me vaya otra vez. Dale pa' vernos, tengo el cuarito de aquel dito menos. Vamos a perro negro pa' perreármela bien bueno. ¿Qué hacemos en la casa? Grosería, de noche y de día, todos los senos.
We can have the best streets, best squares, the best buildings, best things, but that does not guarantee connection, sense of belonging, and I deeply believe that connection begets happiness. When you're connected, you're happier.
It would be New York, that would be Broadway, or Paris would be Champs-Élysées. This is the Alameda of Santiago.
And here's the Plaza d'Italia, and what happened there?
Plaza Italia. Yeah, you see like the honks. This is a very alive part of the city. This was like the epicenter of the protest that Chile had on 2019, on what we call the social crisis. And millions of people gathered here demanding changes in the country. So we're going there now. You can still see a lot of graffitis around the area, but much less than you would be able to see even months ago. There's a program to recover the whole avenue because people have been leaving the center. So that's a very complicated thing for the city. If you don't have people in your city center, then it's bad news. And there's a strategy to recover people and bring people back to the center. And today we are working with the regional government on like engaging communities and stakeholders to create an actual plaza, because otherwise it's just like spaces for cars. So this will be 8 kilometers of bike lanes connecting this plaza with the western side of the avenue, and we are working with the government on designing and making the participatory process for this. What do you do when you are in your bicycle and you finish a bike route? You don't know what to do, and that's where actually most of the accidents happen. Before the pilot, 800 bicycles daily were passing along this road. Today it's 5,400, so that's an increase in 560% of the use of bicycles. We're not talking only about connecting people, but also about connecting places. It's all about connecting, right?
Y si nos entregamos y lo perdemos por completo, y si nos tiramos a que esto sea cierto,
Más libertad, libres de cabeza.
Una cancha de fútbol, más seguridad, más fiestas como esta.
Comunidad.
Más alegría,
Más unidad.
Es primera vez que asisto a un malón.
El Gran Malón es una de las principales iniciativas de la Fundación Ciudad Emergente. Buscamos construir confianza a partir de que la gente se conozca, utilizando los espacios públicos de forma táctica y entretenida.
Esa es la ciudad que marcó San Juan.
Se rompe la timidez, el hielo o aquella situación que tanto sabemos que ocurre, que es saludarse apenas con el vecino y no saber quién es una persona que vive al lado de tu casa. Esto de hacer un malón genera eso, amor en comunidad, que es tan fundamental.
Súper, muchas gracias. Vale. It's challenging, I have to say. I always had this questionings from my mother, She was saying like, why did you study 7 years of architecture and now you're doing like barbecues in public spaces? Like, why? What's the connection there? And I was not really sure about what I was doing, but I felt that it was the right thing to do. If I would like try to create better cities, I would have to create connections between people. It's not easy because sometimes people don't want to get to know each other. Sometimes people are just bounded where we live, in our homes, in our bubble. So trying to burst the bubble and trying to rethink public space is a big challenge. And that's what we have been doing with these actions that we call tactics. We create things that are simple to do, that are easy to replicate, that are fun to be involved in. For example, one of the things that we have been doing quite a lot is this idea that I was telling you about, like getting to know each other through a meal. We call it, like in Spanish or in Chilean, the malón, which is a potluck basically. It's like bringing your own and getting to know each other using the street. We design a toolkit that we can give to communities so they can appropriate themselves. We're talking about tools for people to become more protagonists and not just like passive receivers of a benefit, but rather like main protagonists of their changes. So this toolkit has several like elements, for example, posters that you can put on the buildings, in the businesses, and outside your home, some stickers that you can put on your lab here with your name. Good public spaces is not just about infrastructure, it's about the community around it. The big question that we have to try to respond is how to build that sense of community and how to create that sense of belonging. And there are ways of doing that. There are ways of making people feel more owners of their plazas or their streets by taking simple actions that can invite people to spend an evening there or celebrate their birthdays or having like massive community gatherings. I guess that the key thing for creating that sense of belonging is shifting the way we see streets. If we see it as places for parking cars, it's very different as if we see it as our own backyard. From the four sides of the plaza, you have one that is accessible for cars and trucks and so many other modes of transportations, but then the rest is designed for people to walk, to hang out with their picnic blankets. The power of this, it's like bringing together the knowledge of each person of the community. Musicians, chefs, artists, kids. That was funny because one of the first time we did this like projects of the potlucks, the malones, we closed the street and some people were very angry about it because they couldn't go with their cars. So they start shouting to us like, "You communists, what are you doing? Closing the streets!" We were like, wow, this is very political. We're just like having a party, like a block party. But it's something that people probably are not very used to, or we were not very used to, because for many years in Chile we had a long dictatorship where people were not allowed to be in public spaces. So at least not during the curfew times. So I guess there's a sort of a trauma that we have still to heal in terms of seeing streets as places for people. The interesting thing is that when you do these actions that I was telling you before, as simple as sharing a meal, putting a table on the street, there's a magic that starts happening. The idea of sharing something that makes us feel like that we're part of like a bigger thing, a bigger community. And the interesting thing is that when you do those kind of things, there's a lot of like benefits. For example, people feel safer. People feel that they can trust each other more. And then you start tackling deep problems or challenges of our society. So we call these actions like tactical urbanism. It's doing something simple, but looking for a systemic change. We're sitting in the pavement that it was used for cars, but now we're having a meal here. So, and behind you there's a bicycle walking on the sidewalk. So it's an actual church street. cities can be designed for people. Cities can be better for the environment.
Here we have a pepper tree. So in theory, you can take this home, dry it, put it in your pepper grinder, crush it, and have fresh pepper. These trees are all over the park. Just one of those resources that sometimes people might not be aware of what is right in front of you, and all the kind of the connection to urban food systems, to urban nature, to urban green spaces are really all around us if we start to open our eyes and find that connection. Here you can see, as they say, Santiago's green lungs. So here is the park in its full expansion, very accessible by the metro and other means of transportation. And so you can actually walk, if you want, from here, from the entrance of the park, through these different avenues, up to some of the low mountains in Santiago. For example, El Cerro El Corbón, which is almost 1,400 meters, without leaving the city. We come in up here, and I think this is like the designated path of the teleférico up to here. So if we want people to care about nature, I mean, we can fill them with big data. Yes, our cities are greater than they are. They have taller towers than they've ever had in history, but we still rely on the nature-based solutions, the ecosystem services around us for the air we breathe, for the water we drink, for the shelter that the trees provide, especially when we look at the climate crisis and the heat. But if we really want it to be meaningful, if we really want people to feel connected, they have to be a part of it. And so what you find in this park is exactly that. Access to see, different types of tree species, access to learn about this really unique country and geographic landscape, and also access to experience what it's like to climb quickly up a hill. This is what I love about this park. All these secrets. Here in the center of this giant city, we're in this green oasis, alone, swinging, taking in this incredible view of forests, of mountains, of city, and just the level of detail. Yeah, it just allows everyone to find something to connect to.
That's that church.
Really? Yeah. So they just threw in bombs or what?
Well, Molotovs, yeah, Molotov bombs. All of a sudden there was chaos and there was like anger and there were like all kinds of like feelings getting out. Like the frustration that we were talking about the inequality of the country was expressed in public space, but in a way that it went way out of control. People didn't condemn the violence, they were kind of celebrating it. And that also created a lot of like tensions. If you validate violence as a method, then it's very tough to go back to like conversations. If we already start like being violent with each other, how do you create a pacific society, right? One of the big problems in cities today is the perception of insecurity. So one of the solutions that cities explore is like fencing public spaces, putting fences on your houses, on your public spaces, fences on parks, and so on. And what is interesting is there are other options to feel secure in a city, feel safe. One way is building this community potluck. Actually, we have the data because the University of Los Andes and University of Madrid, Universidad Autónoma de Madrid, they ask us to handle all the locations where these potlucks have been happening in the last years, and they cross the data with security statistics. And we figure out that in all the places where these malones have been happening, there's a reduction on 21% on the rates of crimes. One of the things that is reduced the most is the car theft. So we have to figure out why, but eventually maybe people are putting eyes on the street. They're looking after what's happening on the street. So potlucks also make public space feel safer.
We know that we will not change the world by just like having meal, but we know that the world needs more trust. We need that society needs more like community bondings, and that's one way of achieving it.
3, 2, 1. Anywhere I'm at, turn the city up. I could flip a dial to a million. I don't like to brag, but I'm really on 3, 2.
So we're at home. This is like one of our beloved projects called Shared Streets for Low Carbon Cities. And this is a project that we have been doing in different countries. This photograph is from Panama. Actually, it's a project called Panama Camina, so walkable Panama. You can see here like cars can flow on one end, but the other is mostly pedestrian. Apart from feeling like that it was a nice initiative, like 86% of people like approve it to keep it permanently like this, but more than half, like 55% of people feel more safe in public space.
Picking up the slack, joining this prime way, I'm getting to the rack.
We started Ciudad Emergente was in New York in 2011, but we quickly moved back to Chile, and then this was our first office here in Bellavista.
I might leave and wine, find a beach and go surf.
One of the projects that we did here was to connect newcomers with the existing community. So this is our office here, this building.
Really?
Yeah, so but the entrance is on the other end. A lot of migrants from Peru, from Venezuela, from Haiti. So it's a very blended neighborhood, very interesting. This is Recoleta Avenue. Some people say, oh, Ciudad Emergente loves circles, but there's something more on top of that. There's no regulation about the circles here. So if we want to intervene in the street, sometimes the transit authorities, they regulate the lines, crosswalks, and like traffic designs are mostly lines, but not circles. So we started painting with circles because they couldn't say no. In this neighborhood, you have about 300 kids, between 300 and 500 kids, coming to Mustakis Foundation, where we work at. They don't have a safe space to walk, so we designed a more creative and more fun way of making the experience from the bus to the entrance of the place. This was an old glass fabric. It was a warehouse that was mostly abandoned, and they recovered it and they transformed it into this like beautiful and inspiring hub for NGOs and creative industries.
Why spend so much focused time on creating this way, this social design? Why is there a need for it?
The only reason why one should, get up is to pursue happiness, which is not something that you arrive to, it's something that you are always into, Because you can be very happy in your home, you can be very happy in your private school maybe, or in whatever you are able to buy, to be in. But then what society provides you, which you are not paying for, is the public space, is the public realm, is all the things that belong to every one of us. If that space is degraded, if that space is overlooked, if that space is not in the center of our preoccupations, and we're all worried about how to defend ourselves, how to put, bars in our windows, and how to have cops closer to where you live, because otherwise you're gonna, get robbed. So if that public space is the source of worry, I think we're in a very bad place. Whereas we can transform that public space working together in something that creates happiness, safety, sense of connection. This is where we want to be.
I was probably on a very prestigious school of architecture. I studied in a prestigious school of economy, and then I was doing something out of the box. It was like trying to gather people in the street, creating like a potluck. What an awkward thing to do. Why would you do that? Like, it's ridiculous. It's like not achieving anything. But then you put the metrics, you see the data, you see what the chemistry of like people getting to know each other, and then everything makes sense. For me, at least it makes sense, a lot of sense. And after 10 years, you can see the results as well.